I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get up, shower, do my makeup, find an outfit, do all those things to be able to sit here and record this episode. But then I was like, this is my thing. I can show up however I want to. I don't need to prepare myself like I'm going outside of the house to a job. I can show up however I want to show up. So that's what I'm doing today, because today is day one of my period and it is angry this month. Normally day one is pretty chill, like light flow. I'm feeling a lot better than I do the day before, but right now for this one, it's just, it's angry at me for some reason. I don't know what I've done to it. I didn't know it was going to be coming today. It just sort of, boop, here I am. I don't track my period. I don't believe in tracking my periods. I feel like life should just be lived. You don't need to always think about that thing that's coming up around the corner, that thing that's tormenting you. I don't think I need to track my torment. So I just let it happen, and I let it happen. And it's really just, it just does not like me this month. But I wanted to record this episode because not only have I had to overcome being on my period to be here in front of you today, it's Sunday the 29th of March, 2026. Yeah, that's the date. I also had to watch rewatch Manosphere, because I've watched it twice now. The second time I did it for like research for this episode, and I sort of had to speed through the last 44 minutes of it, 44, because I was just, it's like burned into my mind. I'm just like, this again. And after I watched it, I went to sleep, and that's a bad mix, by the way. Once you watch it, you should then watch something light to just get your mind off of how sad it is and how scary it is. But I didn't do that. I went straight to bed after it, and I had a dream. And in the dream, it was just so... I was on a train. I don't know where the train was going, but it was going at high... Oh, was it a plane? I think it might have been a plane that was flying really, really low, and then the plane turned into a train. Okay, are you following? And when it had turned into a train, it was going at speed through the countryside. And there were two women on the train who started arguing with each other. One of them seemed very reasonable, and the other one was just a bit like, what are you doing? Have some sense, woman. And essentially, the one that I was like thinking have some sense, she had a can of a drink that she had finished and she wanted to throw it away in the bin. And the other woman was like, you don't need to get mad about that. Just hold on to it. Once we get off the train, you can throw it in the bin, put it on the floor, put it in your bag, put it somewhere. Just don't get mad. And the woman with the can was like, nah, gotta throw it away, da-da-da-da. She then opened the door of the speeding train and threw it out and was like, yep, got it now. But of course, if you're going to, at least if my zero understanding of physics and anything scientific, if you're going to open up the doors on a high moving vehicle, that's going to create like some sort of suction, right? Maybe, I don't know, Google it. I'm not a scientist. But anyway, some sort of suction or vacuum was created and pulled her out of the train. So the can went out, she went out, and she somehow sort of survived it, because when the train was going past a certain point, in my mind's eye, in the train, I could see her like in a bad way in some hedges. So she somewhat survived it, but she was dumb for doing that. And after that happened, the doors had closed, the train was still going down the track really, really quickly. And we went past some trees / bushes hybrid, and these weren't real trees / bushes. They were men dressed up as like Igbo masquerade. I don't know whether they're these masquerades that we have in Nigeria. I don't know whether it's only in Calabar, but they're in Calabar. Google it, or I'll put a picture up if I can figure out how to do that in the edits. But these Igbo masquerades, which are men dressed up in these costumes that have these like big scary masks. It has raffia hanging off of it. It's very like, there's a lot of movement to it, and it's very, very intimidating. And essentially these men were dressed up in these costumes because they wanted to lure people in, to try and make them think that they're trees. By people, I mean women in, try and make them think that they're trees. And then once the women come, they attack them, which is scary. And then as the train kept on going, there was another thing that happened where there was this train that pulled up beside us that was really, really long and filled to the brim with men who were about to rob us. So our train was going down the track in one direction. The other train was parallel to us, and they were both going at the same speed. I even think the other train was faster than us. Maybe they wanted to stop at a certain point to cut us off. Maybe that was their plan. But as their train was going by, I could just see it filled to the brim with men who were ready to jump out and completely take over the train that we were in and do whatever it is they were going to do. And then somehow, some way, as our train was going down the track, it had turned right. And as it turned right, the other train, they weren't expecting us to go right because somehow the tracks switched or whatever. And they just kept on going forward. We went right. So I think we ended up being safe. So I'm just like, I've gone through rewatching Manosphere, filled with just dangerous men and questionable women. And now I'm having this dream filled with dangerous men and a very stupid woman. Why? Why must it continue on into my dreams? So I want to go over what Manosphere is in case you haven't seen the documentary. It's a Louis Theroux documentary that's on Netflix, and it basically follows a group of men and these beliefs that they have about what a man is, what a woman is, and the place of men and women in the world. I know in the last podcast episode I said, watch the Tyra Banks documentary, and then whiplash, we're now watching Manosphere, so I'm sorry for that, but stay with me. If you haven't watched the documentary yet, listen to this. I think you should still listen to it because it's not a documentary I would necessarily recommend. I don't think there's much to gain from watching it apart from just understanding how other people think. And I think you can get that summary from those who have watched it. You don't need to necessarily go out of your way if you're like, not really feeling it right now. Don't know whether it's worth a watch. Watch it if you want. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. But there may be there will be some spoilers coming up in this documentary. I mean, here's a spoiler. The men in there are trash. They're just very sad people. And they have some very, very scary views. That's the real spoiler of it. But if you are a human being that's been living on planet Earth, you already know this is a fact. And that's just, the only spoiler is them spoiling the lives of other men and women. So there's no news there. But Manosphere essentially follows 4 grown-up boys who are, I think, from around the ages of 23 or early 20s to mid-40s. And Louis Theroux, I'll call him Louis Theroux. He follows them and really gives them space to communicate how they feel about certain situations, how they view men and women, and how they view themselves and the value that they are adding to society. I've heard some criticisms of people coming after Louis Theroux because they thought he was a very bad documentarian. But I think what he did was give these grown-up boys a way to just communicate fully the extent of their beliefs, and that was very, very revealing. Before I give you the recap of how the documentary unfolded, let me first start off with some definitions, because there's some definitions I've heard flying about that I didn't even know existed. Like, I had no idea manosphere was a term until this documentary came out. I've heard of the term red pill, and I've always had an idea of what it is because I've seen some content here and there, and these discussions that I have with my circle of people. But manosphere, so as described by UN Women, the UN, So the UN Women describes Manosphere as a loose network of communities that claim to address men's struggles, so in dating, fitness, fatherhood, but it ends up promoting harmful definitions of masculinity. And the second phrase is Red Pill. Red Pill is a community that have essentially co-opted a phrase from the movie The Matrix. And red pill is defined as an ideology, or to be red-pilled, which means waking up to a reality that the world favors women over men. So these men in the manosphere, the group of men that essentially encourage one another to be versions of what they think a man is, they have this red pill ideology within this community, and that red pill ideology is they are seeing that the world is built for women. The world favors women than it does men, and men are disenfranchised and they need to rise up to take back control. This is what the documentary centers on. So Louis Theroux follows these 4 men around, and we're able to get an insight into their lifestyles. So they hang around a lot of OnlyFans models. They go to the gym. They go clubbing. They're really into like sex and talking about sex and having sex and telling everyone that they've had sex. They're very much into money and either running their own businesses or creating content, but doing things that are going to make them a lot of money, typically at the expense of all the little boys and all the other grown-up boys that watch their content. They show themselves in expensive cars, and they show themselves on holidays in Miami, in Dubai, essentially living that high life. And as they're doing all of this, they're in front of the camera preaching about this is what a man is. A man is someone who has money. A man is someone who works on their fitness. A man is someone who can have sex with whoever they want. A man is someone who loves women. We'll get to that later. Like, this is what a man is. This is all of what they're doing. And as they're doing this, a lot of their audience is, as I said, they're like little boys, like teenage boys, and even younger than teens. I think there was a little boy in the show that looked from like around like maybe 9 years old, that was taking pictures with these guys because he's a fan of them. But I think something that Louis Theroux said is that mostly the age group that watch and consume the content of these men are around the 13 to 14-year-old mark, which is very, very dangerous. And these 4 men that Louis Theroux follows, they believe that they're having a necessary and positive impact on the lives of these boys and grown-up boys. And the impact that they're having, we have been able to see glimpses of that, not only in our society today, but we're also able to see the impact of that within the documentary itself. So we saw boys coming up to them and being like, oh, we're such fans of you. Thank you for all that you're doing. You know, fuck women. And like homosexuality is bad. You know, fuck the gays and all of those things. And sorry for my language, but that is the impact that they're having. They are saying, these men, and that seems to be a continual theme throughout the entire documentary, these men are saying that they love women, like they love women. They're very adamant about that they love women. However, their actions are not that of men that love women. Their influence on other people watching their content has stirred up hate against women. In society, we're seeing a lot of men who are part of the manosphere and who subscribe to that red pill ideology hurt and harm women. So there is a disconnect there. I don't know whether they know that there's a disconnect there between them loving women and their words and their actions not aligning, and their impact and influence on other people also perpetrating continual hate against women, because apparently the world is built for women, and apparently the world is built to favor women, these men are the victims. It is very interesting to see the inner workings of them, because before this documentary I knew bits and pieces, but I didn't know the depths of their beliefs within this little community. And don't get me wrong, I disagree with almost all of it, and I will get into a little bit of that. But what I mainly want to focus on in this episode is the learnings that we can have as women, as men, as society from watching them. But there were some things that they said that I do agree with. Like, I agree with the fact that I think that we are in a matrix, and I think that the way the world has been designed is to create workers, is to create people who are compliant with big businesses and big corporations and the government. I think that's what we have been trained to do. We have institutionalized education, which is important to be educated. I think that you're not necessarily taught in schools to be business owners, to run companies, to just explore the world and to live your life. You're not encouraged to do those things. You're encouraged to get a degree, to be hired by a company, and you work within that company, and maybe you're able to work your way up to a certain level of management there. Great, that's your life sorted. I don't think we're taught to really think expansively and think about what the world could be and what worlds we could create. I feel as though that way of thinking and that way of being is something that happens or something that is more common within the upper class, so those who are maybe connected to government or royalty or whatever, who are able to have access to really whatever they want because of the networks they have and the connections that they have. So that's a part of the manosphere I agree with. I think it is important to question everything, and I think it is important to think critically. I'm not sure if they think critically, because they think toxically, not critically, I would say. So the other thing I agree with is don't just accept what society gives to you. And I think what they may mean by that, or at least my interpretation of that, was create the life that you want. Don't just move docile through life. Create the life that you want. Don't just think, okay, these are the steps that everyone does. So they go to school, they go to university, they then get a job, they then maybe start a family, and they live their life working and, being with their family, maybe going on holiday once a year or whatever. Don't just accept that. Take some time to actually think about the life that you want, rather than just going based on what's already programmed into society. And the last part, which is a curveball for maybe some of you, but there was this one person in the documentary, one of the grown-up boys in it, that was saying that he believed that the world was run by Satanists. And that's like the only thing Louis Theroux was like, what? No, it's not. You don't really believe that, do you? Oh, that's completely poppycock. Like, no way. And the fact that he was so adamant, and which is like the only thing in the documentary he was like absolutely not about. He just was not having any of it, which makes me think it's real. I already believe that the world is run by Satanists. Like, just look at it. We should have a conspiracy theory episode. It would be more than one episode, because there's so many of them. And also, don't call it conspiracy theory. Call it critical thinking, right? Because you can't just accept what you're told. You think the Kanye that's walking about currently today is actually Kanye? It's not. It's not. Let me know if you want me to get into that, because I will bring all the receipts. I can barely even listen to any of his music today because I just get so sad, being like, R.I.P. Kanye, I think he's dead. I think he's dead. I think they cloned him. I think that's a clone walking around. Yeah, I do. I believe it. But the overwhelming majority of what they said and the beliefs that they have, I was left flabbergasted. Like, I know that men en masse are very problematic. However, I didn't think that it was this bad and this warped. A view that a lot of them shared was that women shouldn't vote. And I was just like, that's just dumb. You know what I mean? It's just dumb. It makes no sense. I'm not even going to get into how it doesn't make sense. It's just a dumb belief to have. They also very frequently referred to their partners or just women around them as dishwashers and cleaners. That was something that they seemed to take great pride in. One of them was like, yeah, my woman's going to come over and clean my room. He said that like 3 times. And then when she was there, he was like, yeah, could you just go and clean my room? Like, not even asking, he was like, go clean my room. There was a sense of just, pride, like, I'm the man in that because I'm telling this woman to go and clean up. And this one squatted down, behind the camera and out trying to get out of the camera line and went and cleaned the room. What the heck, women? Another belief that they had was one-sided monogamy. So essentially, they're in a committed, if you're not watching this, I'm doing bunny quotes. They are in a committed, bunny quotes, relationship with whoever they're with, and the men, can go out and sleep with whomever they want, go on dates with whomever they want, but the women can't do that. And the reason that they gave was, women don't want that. Women that love men, they don't want to have any relationships with any other men. They want to be with that man. Is that the reason? Is that the reason, sir? For this one-sided relationship? You're doing it for the women? Because you know what women want? And you think that women don't want to go and sleep with other people and only you can go and do that? I think obviously nothing that they do, nothing that they say is really to benefit a woman. That's not what their MO is. A lot of the one-sided monogamy that comes from, and we see that later on in the documentary, we see that comes from a sense of insecurity on their end and that fear of abandonment of, if I'm going out and sleeping with other people, she can't do that. She needs to stay with me because that makes me feel powerful. That makes me feel in charge. That makes me feel safe and secure. If she goes out and sleeps with other people, I'm going to feel like less of a man because how's my woman going and sleeping with other men? Oh, what if she leaves me? There's that constant theme of abandonment all the way throughout the documentary, which is incredibly sad. And another thing that was very common in the documentary between all of the men was that there seemed to be a huge deficit in intelligence. You have critical thinking and intelligence on one end of the spectrum, and they're all the way at the other end of the spectrum. But they have been able to hack the system to make money and to influence people based on their, not stupid, yes, there's stupidity, there is, it's like almost like weaponized ignorance, weaponized stupidity. Like there was something that happened in the documentary where one of the men who runs this podcast, where he essentially invites OnlyFans models on and asks them, questions of like, name whatever countries, and when they can't name it, they're like, you're dumb, you're a bitch, you're this, you're that, you're the other. And he was like, he showed a video, and the video was of some AI guy talking about how, do you ever think when a woman has a kid and the kid just for some reason looks like her ex? Have you ever wondered why that is? And he's like, the reason that why that is because the DNA of every man that the woman has slept in stays within the woman. And that's why when she has a kid, it can look like her ex. And they were like, this is true, this is fact. And I was just like, I mean, I wasn't so good with biology in school. I didn't do it for hires. I think I stopped at standard grade biology. But even I know this is like, there's like, what? This is like, what? there's so you think that a woman can intentionally be impregnated by her ex. Wait, you think that? So wait, you think that at any point women can spontaneously get pregnant because there's old sperm in them that stays active and that just fuses with her eggs. So just is you. I like what? And they genuinely believed this. They went, this is fact. And Louis Theroux was like, you guys, come on. Come on. Like, there reaches a point where you can't argue with fools. You can't argue with fools. But one of them was, I was listening to a podcast episode recently where Louis Theroux was a guest on, and he was talking about the documentary, and he had said that one of the most dangerous men in it was a guy called Justin Weller. He was one of the 4 grown boys. He said Justin Weller was one of the most dangerous men, and that's because I think out of all of them, he fully believed what he was saying. He fully believed men are disenfranchised. He fully believed that men should be able to go out and do whatever they want, and men should be making money, and they should have their way. They should dominate and have their way with whatever women that they want to be with. That women should just be at home. Women should look after the kids. Women don't really create anything in society. Men are the ones who maintain society. Women don't maintain society. The way he spoke about men are these gods, and women are just there to birth kids, have sex with him, and look after the home. Even in the documentary, we saw some power plays there between him and Louis. How he spoke to Louis, how he carried himself. He wanted to be the most dominant force in the room. He needed that. He said that he doesn't believe that men and women are equal partners or should be equal partners. He thinks that men are the ones who save the day. They want to save. I'm just like, what day are they saving? Like, why does the day need saving? What's going on in these days? What issues are men creating the days that they then want to save the women from? Like, because if the women are doing nothing apart from having kids and looking after the kids and looking after the home, and men are doing everything else in society, they're building the buildings, he literally said to Louis, look at the skyline. Men did all of that. Women did nothing. Men do it all. And then Louis was like, is that fact? And he was like, yeah, that is fact. If men do everything, what day are they saving? And it's funny because I think if women need saved from anything, they need saved from the men who subscribe to these ways of thinking. And oftentimes when men who have these ways of thinking and men who are maybe physically violent and just physically intimidating towards women, when we see that happening on the streets, we see all those videos on socials of, women are on a train and men are being disgusting towards them. It's not the other men that step in, it's the women who step in to save the day. The other men are sat on their phones looking and like not really doing anything. They're cowardly, and it's the women who are standing up for other women. Men aren't saving anything. Another view that he had was that that men maintain society. Men are the ones who maintain society. They're the backbone of society. And I'm just like, what do you mean, dude? Like, what do you mean men maintain society? Your daddy left you. He wasn't maintaining anything. But for me, the saddest part of this documentary was how they viewed value. So how these men viewed their own value, men's value in general. And it's so sad because they said, it was a quote, they had said that life as a man, you are born without value. You need to create your own value, and you create that value over time. And we've seen by their lifestyle, by what their teachings are, that value comes from being jacked. So going to the gym. It comes from earning obscene amounts of money to be able to buy these luxury cars and boats and travel on holidays whenever you want. It comes from being the dominant force in all rooms. But something else that they'd said, which was really interesting, was that other men need to find you valuable. So if you're a man, you're born without value. When you're creating the value, which is all external things, it's your money and what that money gets you, it's your body and how your body looks. That's part of the value. But then other men need to see you as valuable. And that's the trifecta. And then we already know how they view women. Women, they're there to have kids. They're there so they can have sex with them. And how they communicated the value of women was that if you're a woman, the value you have is you're born with, oh gosh, what did he say? He said, a vagina and titties. That's your value as a woman. So men, the ultimate way you can assess a man's value is if other men find you valuable as a man. The ultimate way you can assess a woman's value is if men want to sleep with you. So essentially, both men and women are working to be viewed as valuable by men. And if men don't find you valuable, either as a man or a woman, you have no value. But as a woman, you know, you can always be valuable because you have a vulva, which is the right term, a vulva and boobs. Like, have you heard anything so dumb? Have you heard anything so sad? It's like that famous psychological question of if there was, you know, there's a train and 2 tracks. Oh my gosh, like my dream, a train and 2 tracks. There's a train and 2 tracks, and on one track there is, okay, let's say that on one track there's Justin Weller, the guy in the documentary who Louis Theroux described as being the most dangerous one, and on the other tracks there's 100 babies, and you're the person who controls what track the train goes down on. You know, which one are you going to choose? Because if there are 100 babies there, and they're a mix of men and women, or sorry, boys and girls, male and female, whatever, and the men haven't had time to create their value because they're just babies. They haven't worked on anything. They don't have money. They haven't been in the gym. They're just babies, valueless babies. And the women are there, or the girls are there. And I think that's gross if they're looking at babies that way. You know, what track are you going to send the train down on? The 100 babies or Justin Weller? Who are you going to save? Because if you go by his definition of value, the 100 babies. If you're going by, I think, most of the world's definition of value, at least my definition of value, which is that we're all created with intrinsic value. Well, you try and save, both groups. But if you can't, you save the babies. A lot of the things that they say just doesn't make any sense if you have even a single iota of sense. And it's sad because it feels like a lot of the men, a lot of the grown boys, a lot of the teenagers who consume their content are maybe lost in the sauce a bit. They're not really thinking about what they're saying. They're not thinking and not questioning what they believe. They're just taking it and running with it. The impact the rhetoric from the manosphere has on society is that, you know, we're seeing reports of boys not talking to their teachers or not listening to their teachers because they're female. We're seeing boys barking at women and barking at girls. We're seeing disgusting cases of and I'm saying, and these are because there are lots of things around boys because that's their main audience, of boys, like raping girls, sexually assaulting girls, being so dangerous towards these girls because of the rhetoric that comes from the manosphere, because of that red pill ideology. we're seeing a society that continues to be created where women are the main victims of it, where women are being physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually hurt at the hands of men because of this rhetoric. The rhetoric that comes from the manosphere, the rhetoric that comes from the Red Pill Society isn't positive. It's not one that's actually helping women. And it's not one that's helping men either. Because they're preaching a message that says to men, the value that you bring to this earth is your money and your body. And if you don't have lots of money, and if your body isn't jacked, you're not valuable. They're saying to men, you need to dominate. One of them said, I tell my woman when we have sex. She doesn't decide. Yeah, maybe if she's on her period, yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's gross. But I tell her when we have sex. So removing choice, removing autonomy, removing agency away from women, because it makes you feel big and powerful because you are a man. And that's what men do, right? The impact they are having on society is so negative. It continues to put women in positions of powerlessness. It continues to put women in dangerous positions. And even within this group, what I'm learning is that it's not just the men. It's not just the men peddling this message. It's women as well. We've seen some of the partners, oh my gosh, so one of the partners of Justin Weller, they call each other husband and wife. And I literally think that in the documentary, she found out that they weren't actually properly married. Louis Theroux had gone to their home. So initially, Justin Weller was like, I gotta protect my family. I gotta protect them. They're not gonna be in this documentary. I don't want my wife and my kids in this documentary. I gotta protect them. Next scene. Here's my wife. Here's my child. What does that say about his morals or his values? They're up for sale. They're up for sale because now the woman and the child he wanted to protect, they're now fair game. They're in this documentary now. Because they're getting more money, they're getting paid, or because you want them to have visibility? What is it? Because you're so adamant before that they weren't going to be in it because it's your job as a man to protect them, but now they're in it, so now you're no longer protecting them. Anyway, in the documentary, there was a scene where Justin Weller and his wife, his partner, whomever, were talking, and Louis Theroux was like, are you guys actually married? And then she was like, yeah. And then Louis Theroux was like, yeah, but are you married? And then Justin pulled in and was like, no, we're not legally married. I call her my wife, but we're not married in the eyes of the state. And she was like, she shut up at that point. She was like, you could tell on her face she did not know this was the case. And he kept on talking about how, they're not married in the eyes of the state. And then when she had the chance to speak, she was like, yeah, and I know some will say it's risky and, not being married, but, I love him. Girl, you just found out you're not actually married. You thought you were married. You thought you were a wife. You're not. You thought he was your husband. He's not. You have a boyfriend and girlfriend. You have a kid with him. You don't work anymore because you stopped working because he was going to look after you. You're completely tied to him financially. And you thought you were married to him. You're not married to him. And what's really interesting about all of this is that there is one thing. There's one thing that all of them have in common. That most of the men within the manosphere or the red pill community have in common. It's that these men did not grow up with fathers. Either their fathers abandoned them, or their fathers were maybe, actually it's still abandoned because being there but being absent is still, it's still abandonment. And that's what they all shared. HS Tiki Toki, which is, I'm not going to call him HS Tiki Toki. He was one of the guys in the documentary. His real name's Harrison. HS Tiki Toki just sounds like I'm saying something stupid. So Harrison, his father left him. His mother worked 6 days a week, working 12 plus hours a day to put him through private school, to give him the best education possible, to give him the best start in life as she possibly could. She looked after that little boy. And he's grown up and said, women are stupid, women are incapable, men dominate. Women are only there to wash dishes and to please me sexually. How does that make sense? Wouldn't you, if you were raised by a woman who did everything for you, who worked long hours, who gave you love, who gave you as much time as she possibly could, when your father abandoned you, wouldn't you look at men and women and be like, men are kind of trash? Women, thank you for all that you do, because without you, I would be in the system right now. Because his mother looked after him. His mother was strong and responsible and tender and nurturing and protective. But no, now he's grown up and he's like, women are stupid, women suck. Men are the best. Men dominate. Man meat. Man potatoes. Man sex. Doesn't make sense. The other guy, Justin Weller, he said that he was raised by his mother, but his mother was very unstable, beating them every day, burning down houses, probably for the insurance money. They were at a point where they could have been put into foster care, and his father was alive. And his father didn't do anything about any of that. I don't think his mother and his father were together, but his father was just out there living his life, not doing anything about it, not being like, I'm going to come and step in and take my kids away from this woman. But from what I've seen online in the documentary, he doesn't seem to blame his father. He puts all the blame on his mother. And then he grows up to be a 40-something-year-old man who's like, men dominate, men maintain society. Men maintain society. How do men maintain society? Your father didn't maintain you. Your father wasn't looking after you and your sibling. He could have, because if it got to a point where you could have been in foster care, like you said in the documentary, the courts obviously were involved. And where was your dad? Where was your dad? Not responsible enough, not manly enough, not present enough, not maintaining society enough to look after you and to maintain his own family. And now you're growing up to be a man who can't get married, who just calls the person that he's with his wife, probably because of trauma, a man who insists upon one-sided monogamy because you're scared of abandonment, a man who in the documentary said he doesn't get involved with bath time or changing nappies or any of that, so you're also absent. All you are is an ATM machine. It's just so sad, because if anyone's maintaining society, it's women. Because women stay, they raise the children, they go to work, they can design and build buildings, they do what needs to be done to look after those that they care about, and they stay and are responsible en masse. Yet, even though that has been the case in a lot of the Manosphere populace's lives, they still view women as being trash. Even though they say that they love women, right? Because they love women. Yeah, women are dishwashers. Yeah, women are just there to please them sexually. But they love women. Women are dumb. Women can't do anything. Women need to be dominated. One of them said, I tell her when I'm going to put her dick in her, and I tell her when to make me a sandwich, and she does it. And he said that with pride. So these men, a lot of them raised by single mothers because their fathers abandoned them, their fathers abandoned the family unit. They have then grown up to hate women that stayed and raised them and gave them love and care and attention. It just doesn't make sense why you'd hate women like that. It doesn't make sense how you would view women as being weak and soft, and women are the ones who should be dictated to. It just doesn't make sense. And it feels like from a lot of what we see within maybe the parents of those within the manosphere, or just a lot of men in society in general, apart from the outliers, which are, the guys who are actually men who love women, who love their wives, who love their girlfriends, who are kind, who are caring, who work hard, who are protectors, who are leaders. Apart from those ones, it seems like all the other ones seem to fall into two camps. You're either like deadbeat and dangerous, or an ATM and absent. There's no in between. You either don't show up, don't work, take out all your frustrations about how your life has gone and how unpleased you are with it on women that you're with, or you just give them money and don't really do anything. You don't provide love, you don't provide attention, you don't provide care, you don't even change your kids' diapers or give them a bath, because that's not what men do. None of these are what I'd consider a man. A lot of them, like whatever camp that they fall into, these are the fathers that these men have had. And now these are the men that they're turning into. They're turning into the fathers that were absent and the fathers that didn't love them. It's sad. It's really sad. Like, the documentary just showed me, it's boys leading boys. One of them, HS Tiki Harrison, he had said that, what I'm doing, I'm showing boys how to be boys, which is the issue. Because you are a boy showing other boys how to be a boy. You're not teaching them how to be a man. Okay, yeah, there's the age thing, you're only 23, what do you know? However, I think you can be young and have sense, but he's young and he has no sense and honestly no morals, and we're able to see that he has no morals. In the documentary, there was a scene where I don't know what they were doing, but they essentially set up a date with some rando, and they were pretending to be a woman setting up a date with some rando. The rando came and then they beat them up. They beat up the guy and live streamed everything. And when Louis Theroux caught up with them, he was like, what happened? Why did you beat up the guy? And Harrison was like, I don't know. They were like, all my followers were just telling me to do it, so I just did it. Like, you could tell that he was disassociating. Like, it was as though he wasn't the one beating up this guy. He's like, it was his followers beating up the guy. He seemed to be this like soulless, empty vessel who just was living his life for his followers. And we saw this pattern again and again and again. He was doing things, asking questions, making decisions based on what his followers were saying. Looking at him and looking at how he was moving, you can tell he was just empty. Like, just so empty. Even when he was speaking to Louis Theroux towards the start of the documentary, Louis had come round the house and he was like, yeah, I was out last night and I was out clubbing and partying, and yeah, I got head from a girl in the toilet. I have a video of it. You don't want to see that, do you? Louis didn't react. He was like, yeah, you don't want to see. And then he was like, yeah, I got a video. Yeah, I bet you want to see it. I bet you want to see it. Like, he was desperate to show Louis that video. And as Louis was watching it, he was like looking up at Louis, like waiting for a reaction of like, oh wow, yeah, he must be proud of me. Like, he was so thirsty for it. And Louis was just like, did that girl give her consent? And then he was like, yeah, of course. Which I'm not sure about. But his value, the things that he does, how he perceives himself, is all based on how other people see him. And that's a prison. And it's hard not to feel sorry for him. It's also hard to feel sorry for him because of the influence that he's having on society. But it's just so sad to see someone so broken, so starved of love, so starved of value, so soulless, and not know it. Louis had asked him towards the end of the documentary if he'd ever consider like actually doing some good in the world. I can't actually remember what his response was to that, but that question seemed to hit him, like he was actually thinking about it. Because I think he knows he's not really doing anything positive for society. I think he knows that. So my main takeaway from this documentary, and outside of, just understanding how these people think and how they view society, how they view themselves, how they view women, how they view the world, apart from that, was the question around trauma. What does this documentary actually teach us about trauma? And I think it's simple enough to understand, yet complicated enough to actually go out there and seek help. We're able to see that trauma is something that stems from our childhoods. Of course, there are other things that can happen in life that can cause us trauma and shape how we act and view life and society and ourselves. However, I think keeping it in the context of the Manosphere, there's a lot of things that have happened in all their childhoods that they haven't dealt with, maybe willingly or unwillingly. And from that, they have developed ways of thinking, ways of viewing the life, and ways of viewing society. And they've grown up to be these severely broken men who are now a danger to society. And for everyone, a lot of the values we have, a lot of how we view the world stems from our childhood. And they're good things that can come out of that, and there are also bad things that can come out of that. Like, some good things are, if we saw our parents budgeting, investing, being good with money, we would typically grow up to be adults who are also good with money, who budget, who invest, who save. If we saw our fathers fixing things around the house, we're likely to grow up knowing how to fix things around the house, or we're likely to grow up thinking, rather than calling someone to come around and fix things, we would do it ourselves. Or if we saw our mothers working really hard on her business and building something for herself, we're likely to grow up being like, wow, women can really do anything. Women can build things for themselves. We're likely to grow up thinking, having like a work ethic that is like our mothers, where you're working on something for you. You're not going into work. You think that the best thing to do is to make your own thing, to build your own thing because you saw your mother building her own business. But then there are also bad examples. There are negative examples, like you grew up in a house that was unstable and your mother and father would argue, shout at each other. There'd be physical violence between them, and you grew up thinking that's normal. So you get into a relationship when you're older and you feel comfortable shouting and beating each other, and that's a normal thing because that's what you grew up seeing. If you experienced your father maybe being around but not showing any love, not showing any attention, not showing any care, and you having to maybe try and do things, perform for him and get good grades and get a good job or whatever, and you do that to try and get some sort of I'm proud of you, I love you out of him. You may grow up being that type of man where you don't show affection and love and attention to your kids. You're not involved in their lives. You're just there. If you felt your mother resented you because she had to look after you, and she grew up saying to you, you're the reason why I don't have a life, you're the reason why I lost my career, you're the reason why my body is not the way I want it to be. Before you, I had everything. You may grow up feeling those things about your kids. If something goes wrong, if, you had to take maybe an additional 6 months off of work just to heal and to get better, you may blame your child because your mother blamed you. All the things that we saw growing up, all the things that we experienced growing up shape how we act, how we think, how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we see society. And all these things, the good and the bad, should be questioned. You should question whether the budgeting that you saw your parents doing, the investing you saw them doing, was actually good. It sounds good, and the results were good, but is it good? You should question your mother blaming you for the state of her life. Like, why was she doing that? Is that a good thing to do? Question those things, prod on those things. No matter how significant or insignificant it is, that's something that we should all be doing. To see whether there are things that we need to uproot and unlearn, or whether there are ways that we need to understand and see, okay, does that actually serve us? So for example, the good example that you saw growing up of your father fixing things around the house. You can grow up to be someone who is very self-sufficient in the home. If something breaks, you know how to fix it. You may enter a season of your life where you don't have the time to fix things around the house, and suddenly you start feeling very sad about yourself, and the way you view yourself has changed because you view yourself as a failure. You're viewing yourself as a failure because, oh gosh, work is so busy, for example, and I can't fix things around my house. I am a failure. I am incapable. I am messing up. Without realizing that why it is important for you to fix things around the house is because you saw your father do it. Your father was someone that you admired, and he taught you that if anything is broken, you can fix it yourself. And that's what you grew up doing, and you felt proud that you were doing that, and you felt that you were making him proud because you were fixing things around the house. And now that you're in a position where actually work is too busy, I don't have the capacity to fix these things, and these things have been broken for the last 6 months because I've just been so busy, and you are not realizing that your value doesn't actually come from fixing things around the house. That's something that you saw growing up, but right now that positive thing is not serving you, and you can actually outsource it to get someone to come in and fix it, and that's totally fine. That doesn't diminish your value. That doesn't change how your father will see you. That shouldn't even change how you view yourself. But because it's normal to you to fix things, because it's valuable to you to fix things, and you're not doing it, it then changes how you view yourself. Or on the flip side, you saw your parents argue a lot, and you saw them argue in very ugly ways. I mean, maybe you didn't know it was necessarily ugly, but you saw them arguing in ugly ways, and you're now in a relationship, and you are doing the exact same thing your parents did. You are arguing in ugly ways. You are being toxic. You are being violent. You are being unhelpful. And you just continue to perpetrate what you saw growing up because you haven't identified the issues and worked on it. You haven't questioned, is this right? Why is it right? Is this wrong? Why is it wrong? Do I want to take any of these things into my future adulthood? Do I want to take any of these things into my next season? You haven't questioned any of those things. You just let it happen and let it flow. Like, undealt with trauma is something that perpetrates negative actions. And that's something that's so, so clear in this documentary. All of them have significant amounts of trauma, from abandonment to abuse to, abuse from their parents, from probably their peers as well, how the kids view them at school because, their parents weren't really rich, they didn't have money, they didn't have the best clothes. All these things shaped these boys into the grown-up boys that they are today. And the reason why they shaped them into being the very worst versions of themselves is because they haven't done the brave thing of addressing their traumas. Like, it's really, really important. It's important to go all the way back into your childhood and one by one start addressing everything, the good and the bad. Like, for me personally, it's really important to me that I love my home space and I love the space that I'm in. Why is that important to me? Because there was a period of my life growing up where we lived in nice places, we lived in nice areas, and that was all fine. But there was a point where that changed and we lived in a bad area and we lived in a house that just wasn't being maintained and it wasn't very nice. And I felt really embarrassed telling anyone where I lived or having people over. It was a really difficult thing for me to do. And when it came to having people over, I really had to tidy up to a crazy level, try and have things be just so that the house looked as good as it possibly could. And now in my adulthood, I make sure, and I want to make sure, that the space that I'm in is something that I'm proud of, something that I love, something that I would welcome people in at any time of the day, any time at all, whatever. I could welcome people in whenever to come and to be a part of, my home, and to come over for games nights and dinners and stuff like that. Like, that's all so important to me. And that's not a bad thing, right? I know it's important to me. I know why it's important to me, where it came from, growing up, not having that for most of my childhood and now wanting that as an adult. But there's still unhealthy ways it has outworked itself. Like, now I'm married and living with a man, and in part of living with that man, and, our lives are joined together. And at the start of our marriage, I was very this is exactly what I want, right? We're in this house. This is how I want everything to be. Didn't involve him in anything. And that's not a positive thing. Because even though what I want isn't bad, I know where it's come from. The outworking of it is what's key. Because if I am if I'm doing it all by myself, if I'm not involving him, he's then going to feel like it's not his space, and then that's going to cause problems. I remember one of the early arguments we had was around soap. I think I've told the story before, I'm not sure. But I love bar soap. By the sink in the bathroom, I love bar soap. And I was I want bar soap everywhere. Get some good scented bar soaps, some French soaps. That's my ideal. And he was I think he was fine with it, but he prefers liquid because it's just easier. I get it. It's easier to use. It's less drying on your hands. And I was just oh, so you want liquid soap? What do you mean you want liquid soap? And he was yeah, maybe we can have bar soap in one of the bathrooms and liquid soap in the other. And I was just tell me you don't love me. Just tell me you don't love me. I didn't expect to marry someone who hated me. I thought we were in this together. It's not a bad thing. What he's saying wasn't bad. It made sense. That's it's not a big deal. But because I was so fixated on not wanting my home and not wanting to feel how I felt in my home as a child, I went in the complete opposite direction and was I'm building this house to be exactly what I want it to be, which means bar soap in both the bathrooms, and anyone who says otherwise hates me. Do you hate me? Did you marry someone you hated? You know what I mean? These men had difficult upbringings. They were abandoned, they weren't shown love, they had unstable mothers, they were economically disadvantaged. And as adults now, they allowed all the things that were done to them to shape them. Now they're teaching boys how to be boys. In the documentary, you can see their desperation. You can see them wanting approval, like Harrison wanting approval from Louis when a girl gave him head in the club bathroom. You can see the desperation from Justin Weller wanting that one-sided monogamy and saying that it's like women don't want that. Women don't want to have an open relationship. They don't want to sleep with other men. You know, they only want you. If they love a man, they only want you. He doesn't. That's not why his wife, partner, whomever can't go and sleep with other men as well, because he's already sleeping with other women and dating other women. He doesn't want them both to have an open relationship because he's scared of being abandoned, like he was abandoned when he was a kid. He doesn't look after his children. He doesn't feed them. He doesn't change their diapers. He doesn't give them a bath because he didn't have a father that did all those things. There's another guy in it called Myron Gaines who was just, I don't know what his story is, but he was just unintelligent and toxic. Like the worst mix of things. How can you be unintelligent and toxic? I guess that's better than being smart and toxic. But can you be toxic if you're smart? Yes, you can be. There are many of them out there. Many of them weaponize. Anyway, yeah, he's just like dumb. I don't know what his story is, but I bet there's a lot of trauma there. I bet there's a lot of abandonment there. I bet there's a lot of bullying there. And now he's grown up to be a bully. Yeah, so I just feel like this documentary is a cautionary tale of the human being you can turn into when you don't deal with your trauma. And we all have traumas. We all have things that have happened that have shaped us and shaped our views. Maybe some of you don't want to get married because you saw your parents have a failed marriage and you don't want that yourself. So maybe you're now just in a partnership. Your partner may want marriage, but you don't, because you don't want the same thing to happen to you as it happened to your parents. You may be in a situation where like your kids, if they're not doing well at school, you come down really, really hard on them because when you were younger, that's what your parents did to you. If you didn't do well in school, they were abusive towards you. They didn't show love to you. They took away their love from you. Maybe you're doing that to your kids now, because that's what you saw growing up. Maybe like me, you want to be in a nice environment, to be in a home that you love and that you are proud of, that you'd want to invite people over to, because you didn't have that growing up and you don't want to not have that as an adult. We all have different traumas of different levels. We all also have, hopefully, good things that we've seen growing up, whether it's our parents working really hard, or maybe it's our parents not having much, but they showed us love anyway. Maybe it's our fathers fixing things around the house, or our mothers fixing things around the house. And that's taught us how to be self-sufficient. It's important to see all those things and see where our ideas and our ideals come from and challenge those things. Because not everything that we saw growing up that's good, that we're currently are practicing in our lives today, is necessary or even serves us in this day and age or season of our lives. And the bad things that have happened, we need to understand the impact that has had on us. And we also need to work to not perpetrate the bad things that we saw growing up. And that's something that I want to encourage you all to think about. And if you've listened to my recent episodes, you know that I went through a career break last year, and part of what I did on this career break was really just take some time to unpick who I am and who I've become, and to understand how I became the person I was at the start of that career break, which was just, I was just sad and I did not know who I was. I did not know who I had become. And I spent a lot of time in silence, just understanding me and working on things and addressing things. And it was very hard and it was very confronting, but it had to be done. And it's a continual process. Like, I mean, I'm still in the process of that. And if it's something that maybe you haven't started, or if it's something that you haven't done in a while, my suggestion to you, what I'd encourage you to do, is to go for a walk. Maybe take 5 days, every day, or a few times out of those days, isn't it? Go for a long walk. Go for a walk that's just you. You're not listening to anything. You're not watching anything. You're just there walking. And as you're walking, you tell your mind, cast yourself back to your childhood and see what comes out. I call these things connected walks. I remember saying that to one of my friends and she was like, how are you gentrifying walking? Like, it's just walking. I'm like, no. It's connectivity walks, because you're connecting to yourself. You're not connected listening to things, you're connecting to yourself. So go on a connectivity walk and take some time to really just think, because you don't want to continue moving through life not addressing your issues. We've seen how that happens in the Manosphere documentary. We've seen all those men who are just walking vessels of traumas that they continue to perpetrate and create bad men. How can you be part of building the next generation, or influencing and impacting the current generation to be the healthiest versions of themselves if you yourself are unhealthy? It's important to deal with your stuff. It's important to address your stuff and challenge your stuff. On that note, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I know it's been a lot, but take from it what you will. Remember to email me at justtalkaboutitpod@gmail.com. Send me in your stories, send me in your questions, send me in your comments, your concerns, anything. And I'll start reading some of these out on future episodes of the podcast. Make sure that you're following me on Facebook. Actually, yeah, I am on Facebook now, but I don't really know. I'll tell you how that goes. But I'm on TikTok. TikTok is really active. Also on Instagram. Follow the podcast on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify podcast. Give me a 5-star rating. Do all the things. And have a good day. Have a good week. Have a good life. Bye.